Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing a Cyber Dragon deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys because this deck is an amazing OTK deck that I've included all sorts of spicy tech cards in this build for you guys. So without further ado, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell notification, become part of notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards. Like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing 3 copies of Cyber Dragon. This card is an extremely nostalgic card that has an amazing effect that if we don't control a monster and our opponent controls a monster, we can special summon this card from our hand, which is an amazing effect for this card to have, so you can go in for some really amazing fusion or XZ plays. We then play 3 copies of Cyber Dragon Core. Cyber Dragon Core is a definite 3 of the deck because this card is the best normal summon in the entire build. That when this card is normal summon, you can add a Cyber Spell or Trap card from your deck to your hand, which is a crazy powerful effect to get to the exact card that you need. We then play 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Hurts. I have bumped this card down to 2 from previous builds, and I really like this card at 2 in this build because it has a great ability. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can add one other Cyber Dragon from your deck or graveyard to your hand, which is a great ability for this card to have. We then play 2 copies of Cyber Dragon Nashter. Nashter is an amazing extender in this deck because it has a great ability that you can discard one other monster to special summon this card from your hand. And if this card is normal or special summon, you can actually target a machine monster with 2100 attack or defense in your graveyard and special summon it. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except machine monsters, which is not that big of a deal because that's usually all we're summoning anyways. But the cool thing about your copy of Nashter, Hurts, and Core is they all count as Cyber Dragon while on the field or in the graveyard, which is an amazing thing about all 3 of these cards, that they always count as Cyber Dragon while in the field or in the grave, opening up a lot of really cool plays, especially for cards like Machine Duplication that'll actually let you special summon out 2 original Cyber Dragons if you target any of these monsters with Machine Duplication, which is so cool because they count as Cyber Dragon while in the field or in the grave. We then play 2 copies of Galaxy Soldier. Galaxy Soldier is a definite 2 of in the deck that has a great ability that you can send one other light monster from your hand to the graveyard to special summon this card from your hand in defense position, and when this card is special summoned, you get to search an additional Galaxy Soldier from your deck, letting you get another card into your hand, which is so cool about this card. It helps you get a level 5 monster on your side of the field, which is a really nice effect for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Terverion King Regulus. Terverion King Regulus is really good as a 1-of in this build just to give you a walking negate. You can also search this card off the effect of Clockwork Knight, which is why we play this card as a 1-of in the build. We then play 2 copies of the Star Destroying Kaiju. This card is great as a 2-of in the build because it is searchable in this deck, but it's great to be able to give this card to your opponent over a really powerful card that you normally wouldn't be able to deal with, and just have a card that you can contact fuse away with because this card is a light machine monster, which is super cool about this card. This card is an amazing 2-of in the build. We then play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is the best hand trap in the game currently, and it's just absolutely crazy at just stopping your opponent from touching the deck. This card is a definite 3-of in the build. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to start off with a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. This card is really good as a 1-of in the build, basically to just deal with your opponent's back row. It's really good in this deck because it helps you OTK because you get rid of cards like Floodgates and other cards that your opponent might have set on their side of the field to stop you from OTKing, making this card a definite 1-of in the build. We then play a single copy of Cyber Rev System. Rev System's really good as a 1-of in the build because this card is basically Monster Reborn for Cyber Dragons, which is super cool about this card. We then play a single copy of Cyber Repair Plant. Cyber Repair Plant has a really cool ability that if a Cyber Dragon is in your graveyard, you can activate one of these effects, but if you have 3 or more Cyber Dragons in your graveyard, you can activate both effects. But the main effect we're using on this card is to add a light machine monster from our deck to our hand, but it also has the ability to let you target a light machine monster in your graveyard and shuffle it back in the deck, which is a pretty cool ability for this card to have. We then play a single copy of Cyberload Fusion. Cyberload Fusion's a really good one-of in the deck just to help us fusion summon into some really powerful cards by putting those cards back into the deck. It's a really good one-of in this build. We then play a single copy of Triple Tactics Thrust. Triple Tactics Thrust is a crazy powerful card in this deck. You don't have to play this card. If you want a more budget option than this card, you can play another copy of Triple Tactics Talents, which we already play as a 2-of in this build, or play a card like Monster Reborn in this build. But this card is amazing because it basically turns your copy of Harpy's Feather Duster into a 2-of in this build because it can actually search normal spell cards, which is crazy. It can even put normal trap cards on your side of the field, which is just so cool about this card, and it's a really powerful card currently in the meta. But you don't have to play this card if you don't want to in the build. You can change it out for cards like, again, Monster Reborn or another copy of Triple Tactics Talents. Speaking of Triple Tactics Talents, we do play 2 copies of it in this build, and this card is amazing, letting you dig into the deck for drawing 2 if your opponent hand traps you, which is just really cool. You can also take control of an opponent's monster if you want to help you OTK, or even look at your opponent's hand to see what other hand traps they have in their hand, or combo pieces they might have in their hand to be able to put them back in the deck, which is just so good about this card. You can play 3 of this over the copy of Thrust if you want to, and that is a really good option for you guys if you want to go that route. I just really like Thrust in this deck because it helps you get to cards like Machine Duplication, it helps you get to copies of Triple Tactics Talents, and you can even get to Harpy's Feather Duster, which is just so cool about this card. We then play 3 copies of Cyber Emergency. Cyber Emergency is a definite 3 on deck. This card is basically Rhoda for Cyber Dragons and lets you add a light machine monster that cannot be normal summon or set, or a Cyber Dragon monster from your deck to your hand, which is amazing about this card. We then play 3 copies of Machine Duplication. Machine Duplication is really good as a 3-of in the build because this card works so well with your copy of Core, Nashter, and Hertz because they count as Cyber Dragon while on the field, letting you summon out 2 of the original Cyber Dragon to your side of the field instead of copies of themselves, which is so cool about this card. This card is a definite 3-of in the build. We then play 3 copies of Duality. Duality is a really spicy tech card in this build because this card is amazing in this particular deck because there's so many different combo lines you can use with this card, tagging your light monsters out for dark monsters or targeting your dark monsters and tagging them out for light monsters. For example, you can take your copy of Cyber Dragon that's a level 5 machine monster and tag it out for your copy of Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, which is super cool about these cards because the only difference is that this is dark and this is light, so you can use Duality to tag them out, which is just super cool about this card, making this a definite 3-of in the deck. There's so many cool different tag outs that you can do with your copies of Duality, making this card so good in this particular build, and it helps out a lot to help you OTK your opponent because it just tributes a light or a dark monster to special summon a light or dark monster from your hand or extra with the same original type and level, but a different original attribute, which is such a cool thing about this card. It also helps you draw cards because it lets you target a light and a dark monster in your graveyard, banish this card from the grave, and then you put those cards back in the deck and draw a card, which is super cool about this card. We then play 3 copies of Clockwork Knight. Clockwork Knight is amazing as a 3-of in this build because this card helps out so much, turning all monsters on the field into machine monsters, and it also has the ability that monsters you control gain 500 attack and defense, but monsters your opponent control lose 500 attack and defense, making it really easy to OTK your opponent. The only downside to this card is that it does increase the attack points of your copies of Nashter, Hertz, and Core, so they won't be targets for your copy of Machine Duplication, so you do have to worry about that a little bit in this build, but it does help out a lot, so you can go in for your Fortress Dragon or even your copy of Mega Fleet with this card, which is just super cool. The main card you're using with this card is your copy of Fortress Dragon because it does turn monsters into machines, which is just super cool to be able to contact your opponent's entire board away, which is just really, really good. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3, and that's going to be 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence. This card is amazing at stopping your opponent's monster effects and also setting this card to lock down entire columns. Plus it has Cyber Dragon Infinity on it, so it kind of goes with the theme anyways, but it's really good at locking down your opponent, and it's one of the best hand traps in the format as well with your copy of Ash Blossom, and this card is just amazing at stopping your opponent in their tracks. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to start with 2 copies of Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon. This card is amazing as a 2 of the deck. It is a duality target, which is so cool about this card. It's very easy to OTK your opponent with this card, because when this card is fusion summoned, you can target spells or traps on the field up to the number of fusion materials used for this card's fusion summon and destroy them. But the really cool effect about this card is once per turn, you can send up to 2 light machine monsters from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, for each monster sent, this card gains 1 additional attack during each battle phase, which is great to be able to attack with this card bunches of times to be able to OTK your opponent. This card is great in this build as a 2-of just to help you OTK the opponent. We then play 2 copies of Mega Fleet Dragon. Mega Fleet is really good because you can contact monsters away that are in the extra monster zone to be able to summon out this card, which is really good because you just use a Cyber Dragon monster plus a monster that was in the extra monster zone to make this card, which is just super good. We then play 2 copies of Fortress Dragon. Fortress Dragon is really good in this deck as a 2-of because this card is just absolutely amazing with Clockwork Knight, being able to contact fuse away your opponent's monsters that are counted as machine monsters when your copy of Clockwork Knight's on the field to make this card with 1 Cyber Dragon and any monster that's on the field that's a machine, you can make this card. Plus it gains 1,000 attack points for every material that you put into this card, making this card a definite 2-of in the build. We then play a single copy of Cyber End Dragon. This card is super good as a 1-of in the build because it does do piercing damage and it comes out at 4,000 attack points, which is absolutely insane. Plus it's easy to bring out in this deck. We then play a single copy of Cyber Twin Dragon. Cyber Twin Dragon is a definite 1-of in the build because this card can actually attack twice and it's very easy to put on your side of the field because it just takes 2 Cyber Dragon monsters to make this card. We then play a single copy of an extremely spicy tech card, and that's going to be 1 copy of your copy of Chaos Angel. Chaos Angel is really good in this deck as a 1-of because it's very easy to put on your side of the field because it just takes a copy of a tuner plus a non-tuner light or dark monster, but you can treat a light or a dark monster as a tuner monster, which is really cool for this card Synchro Summon, so you don't even have to play a tuner in the deck. But the really amazing thing is it's very easy to put a light and a dark monster into this card, especially with your copy of Duality in this deck, because this card will gain some crazy effects if you use a light and a dark monster to make this card. And there's a lot of ways to equal level 10 in this build, and it's very easy to pull off. But this card is really good because if you put a light monster in this card, synchro monsters you control are unaffected by monsters' effects activated by your opponent, and if you put dark monsters, the monster you control cannot be destroyed by battle, making this card very hard to out and a really good 1-of in the extra deck. We then play a single copy of Cyber Dragon Nova. Cyber Dragon Nova is just a great 1-of with all the other cards we're playing in the extra deck. I have bumped this card down to 1. I only find myself going into infinity once in a game, and I find this card really good in the deck, but I really have been testing it at 1 and really like it because it gives you a lot of room to be able to go in for a lot of different plays, and it's really good, especially with the copy of Chaos Angel in the extra deck. But this card is great because it lets you detach a material from this card, target a Cyber Dragon in your graveyard, and special summon it back to your side of the field, which is a great ability. We then play a single copy of Infinity. This card is a walking negate, and you make it on top of your copy of Nova. And since I'm only playing a single copy of Nova in the extract, I'm only playing a single copy of Infinity. You can bump them up to 2 each if you want to, but I find that just playing them like this is totally fine, because you only really go over your copy of Infinity once per duel. We then play a single copy of Double A Zeus. Double A Zeus is insane at helping you board wipe the field. Once you've negated some effects, you can actually go into your copy of Zeus using your copy of Infinity, which is very easy to do and just helps you board wipe the field. We then play a single copy of Seeger. Seeger is great as a 1-of in the deck because it makes sure other monsters get really, really big, which is great about this card. 1 copy of Relinquished Anima so it can gobble up cards that it points to, and a single copy of Alamirage. Alamirage is great as a 1-of the deck because you can link away cards like your copies of Cyber Dragon Core to the graveyard to get you a Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, and it's just really good in this particular deck. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you enjoyed. This deck is super fun to be able to play with. If you guys have never played Cyber Dragon before, you should definitely give this deck a try because it's super consistent. It's super fun to be able to play with, and it's absolutely crazy how easy it is to OTK your opponent, especially now that we have Duality. So that's going to do it for this one, guys. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.